My name is Furman Fordham. I am the senior pastor of Riverside here in Nashville. And we want to welcome you to our Riverside family and to our ministry. We are so happy that you have tuned in. Our prayer is that you will come to know God, grow in God, and sow God's love. We are praying that this presentation will be a blessing to you. And if you are ever in Nashville, we invite you to come worship with us. May God bless you, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Elder Fordham asked me to speak, and he said he was not going to be here. I told him that I was going to call for a business meeting and vote some stuff. But he was so quick to say, go right ahead, that it scared me. So I want to say Happy Mother's Day. You know, when I was a young man and married to Deborah, Mother's Day would come and I would get a gift for my kids to give her, but I wouldn't give her a gift. And she said, well, Randy, why don't you give me? I said, you're not my mother. And I did that for like at least 10 years, and she didn't even leave me. But after about 10 years, I learned to celebrate her as a mother. And I found out it is a tremendous responsibility. I don't know how in the world you ladies pull that off. Now, it can be a little complicated sometimes to be a dad, but it ain't nothing like being a mother. You know, I was watching Steve Harvey the other day, and he said every boy needs a man in his life because a woman cannot raise a boy to be a man. And I said, now that's one of the most foolish things I've ever heard. Because my mother raised me, and I dare him to say, I'm not a man. When I married, I told my wife, I said, now, I don't know what a father does because I was never around a father. I said, I know what a mother does. She does everything. And I found that true with my children. My daughter is almost 40 years of age, but last week when she was sick, instead of calling the doctor, she called Deborah. And I heard Deborah telling her all kinds of stuff to do, like, you know, wrapping a towel around her neck, pinning it around her neck, and putting, Vicks. When I was a kid, my mother would put Vicks on me, and then she would take some on her finger and make me eat it. I was a grown man before I read on that jar it says for external use only. So God protects mothers. The last time I was here, I think I preached to you all from the 11th chapter of John. And I'm old and retired, so I move slow. So I haven't finished with that chapter yet. So if I come again next year, I'll try to get into the 12th chapter. But for today, we're still in chapter 11. I want you to turn with me to John, the 11th chapter, and we're going to start reading at verse 39. The subject is before and after glory. John 11:39. Jesus said, "Take ye away the stone." Martha, the sister of him that was dead, saith unto him, Lord, by this time he stinketh, for he has been dead 4 days. And Jesus said unto her, Said I not unto thee, that if thou wouldest believe, thou shouldest see the glory of God? Then they took away the stone from the place where the dead was laid. And Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank thee that thou hast heard me. And I know that thou hearest me always. But because of the people which stand by, I said it, that they may believe that thou hast sent me. And when he thus had spoken, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And he that was dead came forth, bound hand and foot with grave clothes, and his face was bound about with a napkin. And Jesus said unto them, Loose him and let him go. We are familiar with this. Jesus was in Galilee and got word from Mary and Martha. Simply said, the one that thou loveth is sick. He was talking about Lazarus, lived in Bethany, about 2 miles from Jerusalem. He got word and he said something very curious. He said, it's not a sickness unto death, but there's another reason for him being sick. It says, so that the Son of God might be glorified. That's the reason he's sick. He is sick so that some other stuff can happen. Then John said, but you know, you have to remember that Jesus loved Lazarus, Mary, and Martha. And yet, he stayed in Galilee for 2 more days. And after those 2 days had passed, he finally said, now we need to leave and go back into Judea. And they reminded him, they said, you know, the last time we were in Judea, the last time we were in that particular area, they tried to stone thee. And Jesus said, you know, 12 hours in a day, and He that walketh in the day stumbleth not. He that walketh in the night stumbles. You know, I mean no disrespect. But if I had said to Jesus, Jesus, the last time you were in Judea, they tried to stone you. And then he said, aren't there 12 hours in a day? I said, what? What's that got to do with them? But he was simply saying, you know, my time is not up yet. It's still daylight for me. They cannot harm me. As a matter of fact, nobody can really take my life. I can choose to lay it down, but nobody can take it. He said we have to go now. We have to go because our friend Lazarus sleepeth. Disciples said, well, if he sleeps, he does well. Have you noticed that the disciples seemed a little clueless? You know, it seemed like they were always a beat or two behind. So finally, he said to them, he said, you know, he's dead. He said, and for your sake, it is good that I was not there, because if I had been there, then you would not be in a position to believe. Because had I been there, he could not have died. Did you notice that nobody ever died around Jesus? I have been in many situations where I've said, you know, this person fell asleep in Jesus. But when Jesus was walking the earth, it seemed like nobody fell asleep around him. Nobody died around him. As a matter of fact, every time he went to a funeral, he messed it up. But finally they leave. They leave Galilee and make their way to Judea. They get to the very edge of Bethany. And they do not go to Mary and Martha's home, and they do not go to the gravesite, but they go to a very special place, and they send word to Martha, and she leaves. The Bible says she slips away, and she goes to see Jesus. And when she sees him, she says to him, had thou been here, if you had only been here, if you had come when we called you, if you had just answered when we sent you word, if you had left, didn't you love him? Couldn't you have come when we called you? So if you had been here, he would not have died. Jesus said, well, I am the resurrection. Not I've seen the resurrection. Not I know how to resurrect. He said, I am the resurrection. And I'm the life. Which means I am that preceded the death. And I am that follows the resurrection. I am both life and the bringing back of life. Not that I do it, I am it. She said, well, I know in the last day he'll be resurrected. And She said, but well, whatever you decide, I know that you can do anything. I'm not completely understanding this, you are the resurrection and the life, but I'm going to leave and go get Mary. So she leaves and she goes and she tells Mary. And Mary leaves and she finds Jesus. Many of the Jews followed her. She gets there and she says, if thou had been here, my brother would not have died. If you'd only been here. Oh, you know, that seems a little outrageous, but every one of us thought that one time. Well, where's Lord? Don't you know I'm losing my job? Lord, why is it that this is happening to me? I pay my tithe. In other words, if thou had been there, this bad thing would not have gone on. She said, where have you laid him? Where did you put him? The Bible says that he groaned in his spirit. He was hurt, he pained, and so much so that he groaned. He sighed in his spirit. Bible says that he wept. Jews around saying, well, if he loved him all that much, why didn't he come? Why didn't he get here earlier? If he can cause the blind to see, if he can cause the lame to, maybe if he had come, maybe if he had not been tardy, he would not have died. You get embarrassed sometimes when you are going through some hard times and your relatives and friends that do not believe know that you're going through hard times. You feel ashamed. They would tell you, how is it that you go to church and yet you losing your home? How is it that you can serve the Lord the way you serving the Lord? And yet, your family's breaking up. I mean, we go out clubbing and we all drink, but we together. Here you go to church, give all that money, always praying, and your husband done left you. Get embarrassed, feel bad. I have a friend named Datis. She lives in New York. And she worked for the New York phone company. She was a clerk typist. And they were in the lobby where they had all these little cubicles. And she said every Friday, she and some of the other ladies would go to the stores and put things in layaway. And one Friday they came by to get her and she said, I can't go. And they said, well, why? She said, I don't have any money. I'm broke. I don't even have enough money to put anything in layaway. So they said, you are so stupid. Here you tell us that you pay 2 tithes and an offering. You putting all that money in church, and now you don't even have enough money to put stuff in layaway. There's something wrong with you. That he said it got to her. So she's riding home on the subway, opens up the Bible crying. And she said, well, I'm just going to see if it's giving me some guidance because I'm feeling forsaken by the Lord. And she puts her finger down and it just says, praise always. She said she made up her mind right there on the subway that she was going to start praising the Lord regardless of what happened. No matter what happened. Now she had a daughter and twin boys. And she started praising so much that her children called her brother-in-law, who's a pastor, and said, Mommy is losing her mind. That no matter what you say to her, she talks about how good the Lord is. She has turned fanatical. Something is wrong with her. Please come over and check her out. One day she went to work, and so the supervisor said, look, I have some people from my department that's supposed to be taking an examination, and one of them didn't show up. So I want you just to go up there and take the test, and don't worry about it. Don't worry about, your score or anything. All you are is another warm body. Just take the test and come on back. So she did. She took the test, came back to work, went home. Next day came back when she got there. The supervisor said, I need to talk to you. She said, what did you do when you took that test? She said, no. She said, I don't know what you did. She said, but my supervisor wants me to bring you and your employment record to our office. She said, if you have caused me some trouble, I'm going to fire you. You're going to lose this job. So she goes up there, and the individuals that had given her the exam, they were there in the office. And she said, well, what is this all about? She said, well, as a matter of fact, she scored higher than anyone has ever scored on this test. And the reason that we give this test is to get on the fast track to be an executive. So we want to give her another exam and see if we can put her on the fast track. And she took the other test, and they put her on the fast track. Now, Datis had a supervisor, and her supervisor had a supervisor. And her supervisor had a supervisor. And about 8 levels up on the 9th floor, in a corner office, was the senior cashier for the phone company, which was Datis. So I asked her, I said, do you still go with the young ladies on Fridays and put things in layaway? She said, yeah, I still go with them. She said, but I can buy them now. Don't be ashamed of hard times. Don't feel bad because something is taken away from you or because you lose something. You need to understand that every now and then Jesus will stay where he is 2 more days. Every now and then some things have to be done in order for the glory of God to be seen. And finally, they make their way to the gravesite. Then John 11:39, Jesus tells them to move away the stone. That fascinated me, that moving away the stone. I figure that if you got the power to raise somebody from the dead, You ought to have enough power to move a stone. Why on earth would he have them to move the stone? You see, what he has promised is the glory of the Lord. But he says, before this glory, you've got to move the stone. There are some things in our lives. There are some situations that we're in. There are some things that we have asked God for. There are some things that we need. There's some glory that needs to be in our lives. But before, there's some stones. He says, I'll do the glory part. But before I do the glory, you got to get rid of some stones. You got some relationship stones. You got some bad habit stones. You've got some addiction stones. There are some things that are going on that you've got to remove to get to the glory. You know, see, Jesus will perform miracles, but he doesn't do magic. There's some things that you have to do. That there's some forgiving. You know what I mean? There's some people that you have got to forgive no matter how much it hurts. I know a fella betrayed me and I was just so disturbed with him. And I tried to act like, well, it doesn't matter to me. But it just bothered me. Because on one day, he told me that this is going to be a certain way. And then the next day in a meeting, he does the exact opposite. It bothered me so much that I actually told someone, I said, now, if that guy is going to heaven, then I don't want to be there. I said, if he's the kind of person that the Lord is saving, then he can just go on and send me to hell, because I don't want to be there with him if he's going to be like he is. And then I realized one day, I said, you know, I don't have to ask him to send me to hell. If I just keep on hating this guy, it'll be an automatic thing. And I said, why on earth would I let him damage me twice? He's already done what he's going to do, but that's in my past. Why would I have him in my future? And I just prayed and prayed. And see, it's not only forgiving. The Lord said, the stone comes and you got to love him. You got to love him. You see that? That thing you talk, well, I'll forgive, but I won't forget. That's rubbish. That doesn't work. You got to remove the remembering stone. You got to remove the lying stone. You got to remove the gossiping stone. A lady called me the other day. I was on my way to a wedding, and she was upset, I think, because she was not really invited to it. And she said, well, I'm not really upset that I wasn't invited. I just don't know why they didn't invite the whole church. Seems like to me the whole church. I said, and then have a reception for the whole church. She said, well, they could have a small something with punch and cookies and then go somewhere and have a nice reception for the other people. I said, well, the people that would be upset about not getting their invitation, they would be upset that they were not invited to the second reception. I said, you know what? Why don't you just rejoice in the fact that two people have found each other and love each other? I said, and why don't you let this be the last time that you talk to anybody about this? And if anybody else calls you to talk about it, you tell them, you know, what I decided is just to rejoice in the Lord that they found each other and love each other. She said, well, you know, that's actually the way I feel, because I don't gossip. There's some stones. You've got to remove some stuff. And once you have done your part, you know there's always a part you have to play. Once you have done your part, then Jesus leans in the tomb. Then he calls forth the glory of God. Then suddenly, in the dark corridors of death, his voice rings out, shakes somebody up. That's amazing. But did you notice that when Lazarus was brought back to life, now I know you never visualized this, Lazarus had to come out of that tomb like this. See, you keep thinking he walked out. He was wrapped up in death bandages and death clothes. He had a towel binding his face. He came out and Jesus said, loose him. Now it seems to me that if you got enough power to lean into a tomb and say, Lazarus, come forth, and things start stirring in there, and life comes back into a dead body, it seems to me that if you have that much power, that in that glory, you could have the bandages to disappear. You know what I mean? To where he just walks out in glowing white robe, you know. But after the blessing, after the glory, it had to be unwrapped. The blessing has to be unwrapped. In other words, once you get it, it is your responsibility to show it off. You've got to unwrap it so that the world can see what Jesus has done. You've got to take all the dressing. You can't talk about, well, Lord, give me this house, and then once he gives you this house, you start talking about the realtor and what the realtor did, or you start talking about your negotiation skills. What you've got to do is give him the praise. You've got to take off the wrapping and let the world see, hey, what God has done. Got to unwrap it. There's some stuff that you have to do before the blessing, and there are some things that you have to do after the blessing. I remember I moved to Kenya, and I went to this camp meeting, like 10,000 people at a camp meeting. And I preached, and I made an appeal, and 400 people joined the church. The next week, I'm preaching at another camp meeting. There were 14,000 people there. And so when I got there, I told them, I said, now, I need you to rope off an area up here in front of the pulpit, an area about the size of this section. I said, you need to rope it off because when I preach at these camp meetings, usually hundreds of people join. Now, I said usually, and it only happened one time. But I got up and preached, and I actually preached harder than I did the week before. And they had told me, they said, you know, we usually have the children to sit in the section. I said, no, not today. We need that. So I preached, and then I appealed. And I didn't get 400, and I didn't get 300, and I didn't get 40, and I didn't get 4. I mean, I was doing all of the appealing I could do, and nobody was moving. That vacant space looked like it was getting larger and larger. So finally, I ended it. I was supposed to eat lunch with these folk. I was so embarrassed when I finished preaching. I said, I got to go. So I said, I'm not going to be able to stay. So I was leaving, and while I'm walking to my car, I'm talking to the Lord. I said, Lord, what happened? What did I do? And very plainly, he told me, he said, you didn't do anything. He said, but you didn't do anything last week. You can't take you can't take the credit for his glory. You can't take the credit for his blessing. You prayed and prayed and prayed that the Lord would send you somebody. Don't start talking about your rap or your dating. Talk about what the Lord has done. What he has done. You've got to give him the credit. You've got to unwrap it and let the world see that he is a mighty, mighty good God. I have a friend of mine that's going through a bit of a crisis, and I was talking with his wife a couple of weeks ago. And so I said, you know, when you retire, you have time to do a lot of other stuff. I said, so what I did, I started remembering my life from my earliest years that I could remember. I started remembering everything that happened to me, including as a kid stuttering. I remembered that my mother had divorced my father, and they thought that I should spend some time with him. And I was about 6, and I'm supposed to spend the night with him. And I go to his house, and I'm sitting there on the porch with him. And he says, "You like baseball?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You play baseball?" I said, "Yes, sir. Yes, sir." He said, "Well, if you play baseball, what is the only base that you can't slide on?" Well, first of all, I'm afraid of him. And secondly, I didn't know there was going to be a quiz. So I don't know why I said second. He said, no. I said, third? He said, no. And he's getting louder and louder. So he said, first, it's first base. He said, I thought you knew. I said, well, I'm tired, I'm going to bed. So I went in the room where I was supposed to be sleeping. I opened the window, I climbed out it and went home. That's the last time I saw him. But I remembered all the way back there, to everything in my career. I remember every time I was in trouble. I remember every good thing I did, every bad thing I did. And I finally figured out something that amazed me. That in the end, everything that happened to me bettered me. It bettered me. I had to look around some corners to see some of it, but I said, man, that bettered me. So every time I was knocked up. And never was it because of me being a genius. But each time it was because of what God did. What he did. And what that told me is that you need every chance you get to unwrap something. To take the wrapping off of something and show the world what God has done. Show the world how powerful, how generous, how faithful, how loyal, how kind, how forgiving God is. There are some appointed things that we are to do before the glory, before the blessing. And there are some great things we are to do after the blessing. God bless you.